Aloha, everybody. Happy Medical Cannabis Day 2023. Dr. Clifton Otto here, and it is my pleasure to give the welcome message for this year's virtual event. Here's my background, and here are my disclosures. The idea for Medical Cannabis Day originated back in the early part of 2019 when I was trying to come up with a way to raise awareness about the discrimination our patients are facing under federal law. I thought that if there can be a day that celebrates the illicit use of cannabis, then why can't we have a day that honors our lawfully registered medical cannabis patients? So I went back to Hawaii's Medical Use of Cannabis Act, and June 14 jumped out as the obvious choice, since this is the day that Governor Cayetano signed Hawaii's Medical Use of Cannabis bill into law. There are many purposes to Medical Cannabis Day. The one I've been focusing on recently is reharmonizing the state and federal regulation of cannabis, because the current dysregulation is responsible for all of our problems. Here's a short list of areas of discrimination that our patients are being subjected to. So, to raise awareness about Medical Cannabis Day, we created a logo and made t-shirts, received proclamations from the mayors and governor of Hawaii in the past, had flags flown over the nation's capital, the request of our congressional delegates, and provided free annual educational events. Each year, June 14 gives us another opportunity to hold the medical cannabis egg up to the light and see how things are developing. And I have to say, it is still very uncertain where all of this is heading. We're still waiting for folks to get over their obsession with the commercialization and commodification of cannabis so that we can get back to fulfilling the legacy and the destiny of cannabis as a compassion-based, patient-centered medicine. In 2021, every member of our state legislature agreed that the state needs to take action to end the federal situation with cannabis in Hawaii by unanimously adopting a solution in the form of a resolution that is sitting with the Hawaii Department of Health. I'm very grateful for this action by our legislature. In fact, we should all be thanking these lawmakers for their courage to stand up for our patients on this issue as best they could under the current political roadblock. Some say this measure is inconsequential because it was only an ask and not a mandate. I disagree. I believe this resolution is highly significant because it not only represents the first time that our entire legislature expressed its will to resolve this unacceptable situation, but I believe it also satisfies the duty of the legislature under the oath of office to stop the unconstitutional application of federal law to the rights of our lawfully registered patients and to the state's authority over the interstate use of cannabis, a duty that also extends to officials whose appointments are approved by the state Senate. Which brings us to the Hawaii Department of Health. After nearly 2 years, the department has revealed that it is not acting on HCR 132 because of advice it received from the Office of the Attorney General. Unfortunately, we cannot know if this advice was from the previous or the current AG because the department is claiming attorney-client privilege with this office. Our governor pledged before the election to address HCR 132 and the federal situation with cannabis, and is also referring this issue to the AG. So it looks like all roads lead to our new state attorney general, who has volunteered to conduct her own research on an adult use regulatory framework for Hawaii that will be presented to the legislature before the next legislative session. What a great opportunity to make sure our state doesn't continue to make the same mistake that all the other adult and medical use states have made, which is to avoid taking direct action to end the federal situation with cannabis. We also have a newly created Office of Wellness and Resilience, which has volunteered to convene its own psilocybin working group after a psilocybin bill failed to make it through conference this last session. Perhaps this office is also willing to consider solutions for the trauma that our patients are experiencing from having to violate federal law to participate in a state program. Which brings us back to we the people. This is our government. If we don't start acting like it's ours in a peaceful fashion, then we will continue to be left out of the discussion and the solution. And with that, I welcome you all to Medical Cannabis Day 2023. A special thanks to this year's sponsors, and especially Patients First and Hawaii Patients Union whose hard work and dedication are keeping Medical Cannabis Day alive. I hope you all have a great day. Please be safe out there and take care of each other. Aloha.
Welcome to Medical Cannabis Day 2023, everybody. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting patients. I'd like to thank the Oahu Cannabis Farms Alliance and the Alea Cannabis Clinic for sponsoring this year's event, along with Matchmaker Genetics, Hawaii Watch Live. And we're coming to you today from the Ihi Studios in Hilo, where we've got the use of a nice fiber optic connection. We shouldn't have any troubles moving forward. And so up next, to really sort of kick us into high gear, we've got Jason Hanley here from Kairwailua Farms. Aloha, Jason.
Aloha, everybody.
So we are ready to go whenever you are, Jason. If you'd like to start your presentation, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking time out of your day. I know you guys are busy up there at Kairwailua Farm, so thank you very much.
Yeah, we actually have the northern lights up here on the North Shore, and it's still light out. It's amazing. So
that's awesome.
All right, let's roll through this a little bit. Yeah, I'm honored and humbled to be here, and all of us have been in the same room before, and here we are fighting for everything that's important to us. We've all been through a lot. Wendy Gibson, Dr. Otto, everybody that's on this thing has been involved in some way or another in the last 23 years. So it's pretty amazing. I do think we're at a great spot right now. So I'm just going to roll through my little presentation. Okay, welcome to Medical Cannabis Day. My name is Jason Hanley. I'm the president of the Oahu Cannabis Farm Alliance. We started that about 2 years ago. Our mission statement is to work on policy to provide a local-based medical cannabis economy that provides jobs and access to medicine all over every island. It is called the Oahu Cannabis Farms Alliance, but it is focused on everybody. And we have a lot of people in our alliance, over 600 people strong, with cultivators, local businesses, and of course, a lot of patients that we try to get information out to every month. I'm also, as you guys know, the owner of Kairwailua Farm. We are the largest patient-based farm in Hawaii for about 6 years now. And we've just hit over 2,000 patients. I didn't ask for it. It was given to me. And so here we go. And we're trying to help people. This is the most important thing of this whole Medical Cannabis Day, is to really realize we are all here to help people and get them access to medicine that they can afford. It's simple. And that's not happening right now. As we know, this medical act was passed in the year 2000, almost 23 years ago. It is the first state to pass statute legalized medical cannabis law. California did beat us to the punch, but this is statute in landmark legislation. We are the first state. Here we are, and the state government has recognized this medicinal value of its plant by saying that. We passed the Medical Marijuana Act. We believe it's a medical tool to help people. So why is it not being supported like that? So I'm going to stay as positive as I can on this, but here we are. This is in 2015, almost 15 years after the Medical Cannabis Act. Hawaii lotteried in 8 dispensary systems, which we know can't meet alone the needs of the medical cannabis community. The numbers show it. Less than 30% of the current 40,000 medical patients use the dispensaries. And this is not just the dispensary's fault, but the regulation of those dispensaries. And this is due to cost, quality, and lack of specialized products that really care and compassion that you can give a person every day and understand what they need and be able to be on the fly and make that medicine. When you put in regulations for these dispensaries to be like brick and mortar, safety, 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 lock and key, keep the criminals away, you lose everything you're supposed to be doing with this medical cannabis, and that's helping people. They can't afford it, guys. It has to change. But in a positive note, and Northern Lights in the background, where do we go from here? I've got a little video that I queued up, and hopefully it'll work. And it really starts to show how can we build a robust medical system and possibly a dual system in the future? And it's going to show you that politicians are listening. So I'm going to roll through this if it works. And let's see what we got here. Let me share. This is a cut of one of the, this is SB 669, guys. When it came across the desk, finally, with some success, I want to say, although there was a lot of bad language in the bill. Senator Kay met with some constituents of ours and lobbying people, and we really said, hey, you know, he said, well, how do I pass any type of legalization bill or dual use bill? And we just tried to lay it out to him and said, hey, you got to build this medical first. You got to get the licensing in first, because your dual use system or even a legalized system is massive. And if you don't have these components, even in your medical system, licensing cultivators, sale to sale between patients, you are not ready. And believe me, we are not ready. So here we go, guys. Hopefully this works.
And wholesale their products to prevent monopoly control of any segment of production.
The plan raised perennial questions in the committee vote about overcoming federal law and the fears of law enforcement.
I still see the medical use as being really critical because they need it. But when you have personal use, how are you framing it so that it's really restrictive?
To deal with that, the bill set up a state cannabis authority to unify regulation, requires independent testing for safety, but it would also allow people who are raising illegally to become legit.
Follow all the rules, prove that they're going to operate on the up and up, and ensure the public safety. And then they are allowed to operate.
Yeah, so that's Senator Kay. I mean, you guys, that is probably history right there, to hear a politician say, hey, let's legalize what he called the black market, but I call it the gray market. The black market's coming in from out of town. The gray market is all the cultivators and people that are here that want to help. And so you now have Senator Kay going, hey, let's get on the up and up. Let's license these people. Let's license everybody that wants to attempt to do this and help people, not license a few, not have 10 cultivation site, license everybody. And so we're really working hard on that. And, you know, I'm just going to plug a little bit, and I don't want to leave this too much because there are a lot of people to talk, but canopy flowering limits are the key to this whole mess across the United States. If you limit these canopy flowering limits and keep small farms, you cannot blow it. It's amazing. So I'm going to get back to my paper a little bit. And as you can see, they're starting to understand what a possible equitable medical system and licensees for all local growers. I'll end this. We invite you to be part of the Oahu Cannabis Farm Alliance. We're fighting hard, guys. We're lobbying. We need help. We're talking to the right people. We're sharing our ideas with cultivators, politicians, people like Brent, people like Wendy Gibson. We're sharing these because we all want to be on the same page moving forward and not a broken identity. And so we're working really hard on that. You know, we're working with lobbyists, politicians, local cultivators, and businesses to develop this cannabis policy that protects the medical community. Protects the medical community. I'm not even talking about dual use or legalization, as you guys can see. We got to start here. And then we can have a thriving local industry. You know, we protect the medical, we set up the medical. Then if we go into legalization, we have all these medical growers in place, all these medical retails in place, and we can now move on to a dual use recreational system that is owned and operated by the people of Hawaii. That's the most important thing. So mahalo, thank you. I'm stoked to be here, and I'm going to turn this back over to the legendary Brent Norris.
Thank you so much, Jason. Yeah, we really appreciate you. Thank you for the leadership there. I love Senator Ka'akole's perspective as well, and sounds like we've got some good opportunity there to kind of unify behind those messages. So thank you, Jason. Next up, Mary Bailey from the Last Prisoner Project is going to give us an update.
Yes. Hi, guys. Thank you so much for having me today. So glad to be here. Brent, thank you so much for everything you're doing to put today together, and to all the amazing folks that dialed in today. My name's Mary. I'm based in Haiku on the North Shore of Maui. And I'm one of the co-founders and the managing director of an organization called Last Prisoner Project. We are a national bipartisan nonprofit, absolutely dedicated to releasing the thousands of cannabis prisoners who are still incarcerated. Even though the laws have changed across the country, there are still tens of thousands of people locked up for cannabis. It's an absolute travesty. Some of these folks are serving life sentences for cannabis. I've worked with 4 people who received life sentences for less than $20 of cannabis, and that is actually still happening today. Of course, all of those cases were in southern states. Actually, all of them were in Louisiana, specifically, and they were third strike situations, but they were all nonviolent. They had no violent priors. So if you're interested in learning more about the work that we do, I'm sharing a link in the chat to our website. I welcome you to follow us on social media. We're on all of the different social media platforms, and we keep you guys updated on what's happening about cannabis prisoners. Why are people being left behind when the laws are changing? It's just not okay. These are human lives that are being affected. All of their family members are being affected. One thing that I've learned through doing this work for the last 4 years is that when one person goes to prison, the entire family goes to prison in one way or another. So it's really up for all of us who are cannabis folks to keep pressuring the powers that be to release these individuals. So if you know of anybody who is in prison for cannabis, please reach out to their family members, share our website with them. We have a very simple intake form on our website that they can fill out. Once they have been deemed eligible, which means they have no violent priors, then, and the overlaying charge is cannabis, then they should be eligible for our services. That means that we actually put money onto their prison commissary accounts. It's actually very expensive to be in prison. It's a misconception that everything is provided to you. That's simply not true. So we put funding onto their prison commissary accounts. We have grants available for their children. Most of the prisoners I work with are parents, and now their children are in single parent households and they need help. So that is one way that we use the funding that we raise is for child support grants. And then the third type of grant we have is for returning citizens. So once people are released from a cannabis charge, we have grants waiting for them within the first year of their release. So I am, of course, based here on the islands, but I'm the only person from our organization who's based in Hawaii. And so it's really important to me as one of the co-founders that we are doing work here in my home state. And so I was so proud of our policy team last year, gave recommendations to the dual use cannabis task force. And I just shared a link in the chat to the recommendation presentation. Welcome you guys to read through it. It's pretty deep, but our basic ask is for lawmakers as legalization is taking place, recreational adult use legalization, it will happen within the next few years. And so if that's happening, we have to make sure that we're doing it right. And in my eyes, that means we cannot go legal and leaving people behind. So what we use the term is retroactive relief, and that means to help people who have been negatively impacted by the criminalization of cannabis. So there's 2 main points that we make with lawmakers. The first is resentencing, basically bringing old cases back to the forefront of saying the laws have changed. Let's make sure and bring these folks cases back and look at them, and hopefully they'll really be released on time served. The second part of retroactive relief that we look at is called automatic expungement, making sure that when people, when the laws have changed, that we're going back, looking into their records and wiping their slates clean. We know that the collateral effects of a cannabis conviction run so deep. They can affect people being able to get EBT, student loans, employment. I mean, the list goes on and on. So it's really important that automatic expungement is considered. So I know I've given you guys a lot of information, and we've got a lot of other amazing speakers coming to share more information with you guys. If anybody's interested in learning more about our work at Last Prisoner Project, I am sharing my email address in the chat. And you're welcome to just send me an email and we can set up a call and I can share more information. If you have a cannabis company out here in the islands and you're interested in learning how you can help cannabis prisoners, email me and I'll share more information. We partner with cannabis companies across the islands, across the United States, and we're always open to getting creative on ways to support prisoners. I welcome you to visit our website. You can actually go to the Take Action page on our website and you can sign petitions. You can learn about current campaigns that we're working on across the country. And you can even write a letter to a prisoner. I cannot tell you how impactful that is to spend 5 minutes of your time writing a letter to a prisoner, letting them know that they have not been forgotten, that their life matters, that there are people on the outside fighting for their freedom, their much deserved freedom. I feel really strongly that anybody who is currently incarcerated or previously incarcerated for cannabis, they are the pioneers of this industry, and we would not be where we are without their bravery. So again, thank you all for tuning in today. And I'm going to pass the mic back off to Brent.
Thank you so much, Mary. Really appreciate you. The work that the LPP is doing is touching lives in ways that no one else is. So thank you very much for that. Amy Nielsen, you really understood the exercise. And so this event, we've had a lot of events with medical professionals, experts in cannabinoid medicine, cannabinoid specialists, and Amy is one such person. Amy took the concept of the future of medical cannabis and really extrapolated it into something that is helpful to patients. And I just want to thank you, Amy. And I'm not going to say anything else. I'm out. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much for having me. Mahalo, everybody, for today. I'm going to share a slide set right now. It's about 10 slides long. It is very densely packed. I have the link at the end. You guys are welcome to grab it. I can send it to you. I'm going to share my screen here so we can get started on that. So Brent sent I sent Brent a bunch of conversation pieces and he sent me a bunch of questions back. So I did exactly that. I took his conversation asks and I turned them into a slideshow because I'm a grad student and I do slideshows for my living right now. So who am I? My name is Amy Nielsen. I am a graduate student in clinical nutrition at Maryland University for Integrative Health. I am in my last term of my didactic work, my student work. I take my exam the first week of July. So everybody send a prayer for me that I pass my exam because then I'll be an actual doctoral candidate. One of the very first questions Brent asked me was, why is the future of medical cannabis important to me? For me as an early career clinician and researcher, it's really important to see that we continue to center our patients in that conversation about cannabis use, whether that's recreational or medical. And of course, we are really focused here on medical. Cannabis sativa is a really powerful, subtle, co-evolved species that requires real diligence and study in order to remain in right relationship with this plant. So this is what I study. This is a big slide here about what I study specifically. I study the interaction of the endocannabinoid system with metabolic syndrome, which is diabetes, hypertension, and obesity, and understand how the interplay works between the systems of those diseases, lifestyle diseases, and the endocannabinoid system. So I understand the body and the plant, and I understand how they interact very, very well. So one of the questions Brent asked me was, how does the current research environment drive discovery and application? So when we talk about supporting our medical professionals with literature, we need to have literature that drives medical relevance. So literature is developed through rigorous peer review of research, and that summation of literature, all of that literature put together, coupled with professional experience, is used to inform that clinical application. Right now, we have a severe limitation in the fact that we are not allowed to study cannabis in humans right now. That is changing. There are a couple of laws that are being written that have changed that that structure right now. However, we're still not seeing funding for that research yet because it's all being held up still. What do we, one of the questions he asked me was, will we ever identify all the compounds in cannabis sativa, cannabis indica? Well, my guess is probably in the plant, yes. With enough chemistry, with enough time, we have enough enough biology, enough botany, we have enough computing science now that we can really understand what these compounds really are. Now, all parts of the cannabis plant are used in medicine. We're not talking just about the flowers, inflorescence here. We're talking about those leaves, the seeds, the roots. Some of us even still use the stems and the stalks in our medicine. So when we're talking about cannabis medicine, we need to understand all of the compounds involved. So there are more than 500 compounds, more than 60 cannabinoids now, more than 100 terpenes and sesquiterpenes, and there are more being discovered every day. And that leads into his next question was, is there an official database where people can look and see where this information is? And the answer is yes. If you are a chemistry nerd, like I am, this is your favorite database about cannabis. Cannabisdatabase.ca, you can search for any and all sundry things in here. It's really, really great. So if you're looking for that specific compound that you're not sure what it is, this is a great place to go look. Now, caveat, this is heavy duty science. You may need somebody to help you interpret it if you are a layperson that's really starting to get interested in this. But if you are a heavy duty cannabis nerd, this is a real fun place to go spend some time. The next question is there a future when we're going to see what every compound does on its own, mixed together, and then with a little bit more certainty, then it works differently for everybody? Yes and no. This is as you saw in that very second slide that I showed you what I study right now, that triangle slide, it's a very, very complicated, interconnected set of gears and cogs and turning metabolic pathways that are really dependent on sleep and stress and diet and hydration and genetics. We're now beginning to understand the genetics that are behind all of your endocannabinoid system, and that's a whole other ball of wax that we're going to have to deal with. So on the right-hand side here, there are, for those clinicians that are out there, there are some papers that are very recent that do give you some very good information for cannabis treatment and cannabis dosing if you're interested in looking at that. And then he says, well, maybe we have to have AI and supercomputers to sort it out. And the answer is yes. Yes, we do. We do not have the brain power to do what this plant does. She is they both, male and female plant, way smarter than us. Our body is way smarter than us. As the regulations on cannabis research are changing, as the regulations on computer-assisted research and AI, these tools are already being used in genetics and in cancer research, and they are beginning to be used also in the understanding of the physiology of the endocannabinoid system. Now, this is going to mean that we're going to end up with a whole plethora of new tests that cannabis, that qualifying and practicing clinicians are going to need to be able to interpret. So we're going to need to understand as clinicians how to interpret these really complex new data sets that are going to be coming out of these tests. So the main question for me is, and this was a really great question, Brent, and I appreciate it, is what kind of health care system are we building for the future? This is where my soapbox starts. Educated patients deserve educated practitioners. This is my biggest concern right now. I am not qualified in any state to give anybody medical advice on cannabis because I am not a medical doctor, a doctor of osteopathic, or an advanced practice RN. I'm not qualified basically to give you a Band-Aid about CBD. However, anybody that takes a 2-hour continuing education class that is one of these practitioners is qualified. And that's where I have a concern. We're dealing with very, very complex metabolic systems. We're dealing with those systems that are already deranged by our really complex environment that we live in. Add to that all of our medications, and you really need somebody who understands that underlying base endocannabinoid system to understand how to manipulate that system with cannabis. So, big soapbox, educated patients deserve educated practitioners. So will we ever see a shift in our thinking towards a better future? Yes, we're beginning to do this. We're beginning to develop interdisciplinary research teams. That's teams of scientists from different areas of study who are studying cannabis and how it impacts the human system. We're also developing transdisciplinary research teams, and these are teams of researchers from different communities, including indigenous and traditional communities and community stakeholders. Those of us that work outside of the medical system, but do have patients, like as a nutritionist, I have plenty of patients that I work with who are working with their endocannabinoid system. We can start writing case studies and case series and get those published in top tier journals, because community-based practitioners are where any of the evidence starts. And then in order to do that, we really need university support for our local medical communities. And that's a huge problem across most of our medical states. Our universities have done a very bad job of supporting our medical systems across the states. So maybe we can replicate me and learn more about the future of cannabis. Yes, I'd love to come and talk to you about all things cannabis. I've got two courses that I'm working on right now. Kinda Curious, which is for our patient side. And then if you want to have a practitioner conversation with me about something that's very specific that you're working on, I'm happy to have those conversations. So thank you so much, Brent, and thank you everybody. Mahalo very much for your time. I won't take up any more because I probably have gone over my time limit because I like to talk. So thank you so much. I appreciate the time. I'm going to stop my screen share.
Thank you, Amy. That was awesome. Thank you. That was a lot of information. We really appreciate that. Up next, we're going to jump into the our first panel discussion.
So aloha, I'm Andrew. Some of you guys know me, Pakalolo in Paradise, Matchmaker Genetics. I also host Jungle Cup over here on the Big Island here. I'm a patient advocate, have been for a long time, and always thankful when Brent asks for participation in Medical Cannabis Day. Try to support however I'm able. So mahalo to our panelists as well for joining us today, and to everyone else tuning in as well. So my first question for the panelists is, what are the most important factors to consider when crafting regulations for legalization in Hawaii?
Aloha. Thank you guys so much for having me today. My name is Alexis Muller. I'm a cannabis educator, and I would like to answer that first question. I think it's going to be important to stay true to our roots and our people. Hawaii has a record of giving itself away in the name of money, and I think that legalization should support locals to thrive and not survive in this industry, and to really keep the money locally.
Aloha, my name is Alex Wong.
100%.
I'm Kauai Farm Planning. I'm an educator as well. And I used to actually teach Department of Education, K through 12. I was teaching at Kanui Kapono Public Hawaiian Charter School this year. But what we need to talk about first and foremost when it comes to legalization and moving forward is expungement of nonviolent cannabis crimes. The government should not be making money and paying its bill with cannabis money when people sit in jail, dealing with financial burdens and trauma caused by being targets of the war on drugs, and specifically cannabis. It's hypocritical of the state, it's unethical, and that leads me to my second thing is we need to talk about social equity, first and foremost, when we talk about decriminalization and legalization. Social equity is the most important thing. It was paraded around by the state of Hawaii, that steering committee, that thing that San Buenaventura and Randy Gauntz were a part of, that was bullshit. That was complete bullshit. And we need to do this for real, and we need to do this the right way with integrity. Okay, so social equity. And real quick, since we're talking about this, what social equity looks like in Hawaii is Native Hawaiians first. Native Hawaiians first, the indigenous people first, right? We need to understand and realize where we are and respect where we are, and respect where everyone's coming from in this conversation. They've been left out of this conversation. So yeah, no limit on dual use licenses on DHHL. That's my stance there. No limit on farm gate operators in Hawaii. That's social equity. Okay, mahalo. Oh, one more thing, social equity. We need health insurance and health coverage for farmers, subsidized by the state of Hawaii. Our tax dollars go to so many things. I think the very least that the state of Hawaii can do, if they truly support farmers and farming and agricultural production, they'll give us medical coverage. And I'm not talking about MedQuest. I'm talking about everything: dental, vision, pharmacy, everything. So that's
Right
for me,
on.
that's
Thank
social
you. That's
equity.
awesome.
Everybody loves to see a farmer, but nobody wants to be a farmer. Am I right?
So we have a social equity presentation coming up at the end. If anyone wants to hang around and get the full scoop, so that we can all get on the same page for social equity. Thank you for your mana'o, Alex.
So do we have more responses from our first question, Brent?
Not that I'm aware of. Jacob, did you answer?
I mean, the social equity is definitely a big part of it. I mean, there's a right way of going about this, and there's definitely a win-win situation. And if everybody can be on the same page with taking care of what needs to be taken care of first, is definitely the ultimate goal. And then we can build a stronger foundation and just grow up from there.
A collective voice imperative. We all need to be on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
Cannabis industry and community.
Absolutely. It's torn right now. Too many people want too many different things, and we just need to kind of come to a reason so the people can have what belongs to them.
All right, so I guess we'll move on to question 2. I believe Kalai, the Grow Guru, has joined us as well. If he's not already in the unmuted section, if you could get him in, Brent.
He's there. You can go.
So question 2.
He's there. He's available. He's unmuted.
Okay, cool. So question 2. Do you think there should be a free market with no limits on license awarded, a limit on license awarded, or canopy limits, or other?
For me personally, I believe the cannabis should be in a free market where we just keep it open, let the mom and pops and the local community kind of have their shot at, creating a cornerstone. I think cannabis is a avenue for us to kind of dive down to stimulate our middle class and lower class, give them an opportunity to make a foothold and make a name for themselves. So I think cannabis, there definitely should be a slight regulation. Don't get me wrong, but I think it should be a free market. And if you want to cultivate, you should have every right to.
I would fully agree with that. I mean, there has to be some kind of limit to it. I mean, that's what essentially is going to keep the big businesses out of here and give the little mom and pop place to actually have a chance to excel and grow and be something that they can be. But at the same time, permits, of course, how many, how much, and where, definitely going to need to be a part of it, and the communication with it, of course. But as much as we can, oh, that might get a little out of control.
Totally. I believe that like a regulation as far as like, infrastructure, I think that should be something that we need to focus on. Mom and pops, local communities should have first cracks at operation. And that's what our infrastructure needs to be based off on, is the mom and pops being able to have a foothold. And like I said, be that cornerstone at which, the big entities coming in is going to have to follow suit. And they have their first dibs and their first stakes here in Hawaii. So everyone else coming over, they gotta kind of, fill in the gaps that this mom and pops leave behind.
I echo with both of you that the licensing, the limitation should be on just prevention of oversaturation and keeping the market stable. But those licenses should be offered affordably to those wanting to enter the market, to locals. And I think Clay said it perfectly, that any other outside, companies that are going to come in, that they're limited to just filling in the gaps, maybe for tourism, or, again, where those gaps exist. Some of those licenses can be designated to also produce, promote social equity. Also taking into account the specific needs of the local community. In the free market, just putting this out here, I would love to see like an opportunity for really small mom and pops, maybe to have licenses where we have farmers markets quarterly, or even smaller grows can come forward and, showcase their cultivation practices, their family, and, those individuals connecting with the community is the root of our industry. And we got to make sure that we maintain and preserve that, and that we encourage people to thrive in this industry. And again, not just to survive. And that's important.
Totally.
Love it.
My
And yeah,
opinion
like
about
you said, I just want to throw out there that I think that we do have to have some regulations in place to prevent oversaturation. I'm 100% for the free market. Let the good farmers and businessmen, women succeed, and the ones that are bad at either of the mentioned fail. That's business, and then that way the consumers end up with good farmers that know how to operate a business to buy from, and not buying from just any old buddy that has poor practices in the garden and business. But we do have to have some sort of measures in place to prevent oversaturation in the market, because we don't want to see prices bottom out to where it's not even worth it for anybody to participate. So somehow there has to be something in place to keep market from oversaturation. And I just personally think the flower and canopy limits would be a good way. Let a lot of people participate, but have some sort of limits on canopy. That way, there's not a handful of people growing everything and a few people growing a little.
Yeah. How do you think that'll affect the market value of the product going out for the mom and pop stores?
Well, if we have some sort of measures in place to keep it from being oversaturated, market price should stay, reasonable. At least it's hard to say what that number would be, but make it worthwhile for people to, do that and make a living out of it and be able to pay employees at the end of the day. But when you get into like Oregon, they're pretty loose with their regulations and whatnot, and so they, prices up there for outdoor stuff, $300 a pound. I mean, you know, it's really, you're just shooting yourself in the foot if you're growing so much that you can let it go for that and still make money, because only so many people can get away with that.
Right.
I have a question for the group, and that is, are we just pursuing a free market, or are we trying to preserve and improve the existing 329 medical program? Because I think that a self-regulated free market can exist in the medical community. I think that's possible. I think it's possible if we can up the number of patients that one caregiver can grow for from 1 to 10, maybe 20. I think those are reasonable numbers. Yeah, I think it's unreasonable that one caregiver who knows what he or she is doing is only allowed to grow for one other patient currently. That's ridiculous to me.
Yeah,
That
totally.
makes no sense.
Totally. What I mean by free market is the medical market stays intact. There's still patient to caregiver. That's totally doable. But you know, when you enter the rec market, now you're talking about a business. It's more so with the business infrastructure coming into the rec market. But the free market and the medical side, I believe that, I mean, personally, I don't see much holes in that game. I know people can go crazy with it. Maybe regulation with that to keep that more intimate, because medical market is also craft market, and you can't be craft if you're growing acres and acres and acres of cannabis. Let's face it, that's not realistic. There's going to be some give in quality, and where is the line between medical and recreational if you're stacking cards over an unrealistic amount to where quality is going to have to be affected? So it's kind of a double-edged sword, yeah, if you look at it. So yeah, we definitely do need an infrastructure. The medical market is awesome, in my opinion. The fact that you can grow craft cannabis for another person that needs the medicine, that's an intimate relationship that you have. And not losing sight of that intimate relationship, I believe, is what keeps the medical. Once you lose sight of that, it becomes a rec market right off the bat. So, you know, yeah, you know, you're transitioning over to that rec market now by stacking and going crazy. It's more like your rec. So, okay, you fit that shoes. Now we got to have an infrastructure set for those people that want to kind of go into the rec side and no longer be on the medical side. So to answer your question, yeah, man, the medical side is pretty on point right now.
So jumping back to number of licensees and limits, yeah, no limit on DHHL, no limit on the Hawaiians. I think that's social equity. No limit on DHHL. Let DHHL use this to succeed, right? A lot of them say land rich, cash poor. A lot of these long range plans on DHHL side that are not getting executed. I think in order for DHL to be successful in farming, period, Hawaiians need to have full access to growing, cultivating, and selling cannabis flowers, medicine, and byproducts legally. And there should be no limit on them.
100%. The Hawaiian homeland should get involved in the cannabis movement. I do believe that, being Kanaka, I wouldn't want to see my people sort of get that stigma of how cannabis should be on the mainland. I think that they should have the proper mentality going in and infrastructure. Like I stress that going into this new venture of rec or even like you can stack cards as a Kanaka. I do believe that there should be some sort of guidance towards that for the Hawaiian people so that we don't go belly up, because, you know, with a lot of this movement and a lot of cash flow coming in, a lot can go wrong. So having proper guidelines to keep our people on the right path to success is paramount. I think if you're going to go in that direction where us Hawaiians can grow whatever, let's make sure that our infrastructure and our guidelines are set to make sure that we are successful in the long run. Let's create this as a sustainable path that our grandchildren can still benefit from it. And, you know, like a lot of the funds should also be allocated to the kids coming up. The Hawaiian kids should be focused on with this movement. You know, this is a good opportunity for us. Now that you mentioned that, it's a good opportunity for us, but we need to do it right. We can't just dive into this head first thinking that, hey, it's going to help out the people, because I mean, more money, more problems, right?
So in terms of a dispensary and retail, DHHL and Hawaiians should have direct access, right?
Yeah.
They should have their own dispensaries. There should be no red tape standing in their way. The state of Hawaii needs to work with DHHL and the communities, the Hawaiian communities around the state, in order to ensure that they are allowed to have their own dispensaries, right? I think that's also the main dividing factor here between everybody in this room versus everybody who's representing the dispensaries during the legislative session this year, is that they don't want us to have our own brick and mortar retail, which I think is fine. I think once we have our own brick and mortar retail, that's even more justification on their end to have us do permits and taxes and jump through all the hoops that they got to jump through, the dispensaries had to jump through. I get that. So in order for us to avoid that, I think as long as none of us are pretending to be a dispensary or selling like a dispensary, you know, we could do this in the medical realm. And I think, you know, the Hawaiians should get first crack. So that's my thoughts.
Hawaiians definitely should have a priority. Is also another thing I specify in this argument, this conversation is Hawaiians should definitely have priority. But given this priority, we're also being frontiersmen in this aspect where we're a native people taking control of a rec and a medical market. So having the proper guidelines to push that in the right direction, to make sure that we're successful and not belly up. You know, that's what I'm stressing, that yeah, us Hawaiians, and you know, we talk about, people mention about it being constitutional or unconstitutional that a specific race is put ahead. But we are in the islands. This is our home. We are indigenous people. We deserve rights. We deserve priorities. And I believe wholeheartedly that this priority should be a thing that we have first cracks at a retail, or hey, I want to grow for all my family. I should be able to have no limit cards, but we should have someone to guide people, not to threaten, not to do any of this stuff, just to guide people to be like, hey, you might want to try in this direction because this is what could happen. You know, that should be it.
I fully agree with the training and educating side of it. I mean, just being able to pass this along generation to generation. And that's going to be the only way that this is going to work for anybody. And so training, educating, teaching about the land, Malama, the whole 9 yards just needs to happen, has to.
Amen.
All right. I'm in a full agreement with you guys. I think for time restraints, we should probably start moving along our list of questions here. So I'm gonna jump into question 3, which is, do you think legalization will change the demand or preferences of consumers for craft cannabis products?
Can Howley speak?
What was that?
I said, can Howley speak up? Is that okay? Will you handle Howley?
I think everybody can hear me.
You
I
guys,
can hear you perfectly fine.
okay, you guys don't know me. My name is Al Byrne. I've been working on medical cannabis issues in the United States since 1983. From the looks of it, a lot before you guys, some of you guys were born. I can't tell you how much I disagree with a lot of this conversation I've been listening to for the last 20 minutes. And I do apologize. I'm in Florida, or I'm on a satellite, and I got a storm and it comes and goes. But I thought that the conversation was about the future, and you're talking about today. The future of medical cannabis, or cannabis as a plant, is that it's a plant. You say it's not a drug, doesn't belong in a dispensary. Dispensaries are going to be obsolete in a few years. I wouldn't build my future on them.
Thank you.
It's a plant. Before we're done, what we're going to have is the cannabis plant will be turned over to the rest of the plants in agriculture departments. It will be grown as a plant. And it'll be sold like coffee. And there'll be grades. Of course, there'll be grades. Some of you will make money on laboratory work. Some of you will make money in growing medical cannabis buds, really high quality. Others will make money growing hemp, but not many of you are going to make any money at all. Cannabis is overrated. It's a plant. Coconut trees, tomatoes. There's a definite limit and a definite skill set necessary to grow these different products. Cannabis is just a product, and it will be considered so. Now, just on an international level, you guys are very proud to be Hawaiians, and I was proud to be there as part of the United States Navy for 4 years, the best 4 years of my life. And I give credit to the Hawaiian people, the spirit, their culture, everything that was there was wonderful for me. So I love that place. But you have nothing to do when it comes to international relations. Do you folks know that over 2 years ago now, the United Nations drug control people and the World Health Organization declared cannabis of no schedule at all? It went from prohibited to nothing at all. All right, now, do you know that when that happens in U.S. law, the Attorney General of the United States is supposed to immediately reclassify cannabis in accordance with the treaty, the 1970 treaty? He has not, right? Here's another thing. Do you know that if I'm a veteran, right? I 24 years in the Navy. I'm really, really concerned about veterans. I haven't heard a word about veterans. You're crazy. Veterans right now up there with nurses and firefighters and the most respected people in the United States that they should be. And you should use veterans' needs as a lever to get what you want. We do. I belong to the Veterans Action Council. You never heard of us, but we are the veteran organization that reflects the international veteran concern about cannabis to the United Nations and the World Health Organization. And again, they have changed the rules. Hawaii is way ahead of the pack when you guys are starting to consider having an exemption, if you will, from the federal law. Yeah, you're already exempted. The United Nations and the Single Convention Treaty of 1930 has just been changed. You're already exempted. Nobody just told you until I did. And here's another thing about veterans.
Al,
I'm a veteran in Hawaii now. If I'm a veteran in Hawaii, I go in.
Al, I'm sorry, I got to jump in. Right now we're in the producers panel. And so Andrew is the moderator of the panel, and he's got a bunch of questions that he'd like to ask these growers. Would it be okay if we push some of this to the open discussion?
No, I wanted to break in because I'm an old guy. It's almost midnight and I got to go to bed. But I did want to say hello. I did want to tell you some of these things that you can dwell on and discuss at your leisure. And it's a pleasure being with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Al. We appreciate your time, man.
Bye, Al. Have a good night.
Good night, Al.
Aloha.
Aloha.
All right, I'm gonna jump back to my question one more time, just in case it's been forgotten. But it's do you think legalization will change the demand or preferences of consumers for craft cannabis products?
I hope that legalization will open the doors for better education to what craft cannabis is. But I think there will be a divide. I think there would be your Bud Lights and your craft, you know? You're gonna get two markets, one that just wants what they want, and some people that actually kind of fixate on proper quality product.
I definitely think that legalization leads to increased accessibility to craft cannabis products. I think that with that comes opportunity, to echo on that, to educate the consumer of cultivation practices, the connection to the plant. I don't know if any of us have really been mentioning that, but how much care goes into this plant. And once we've, cultivated and curated this plant, then giving it to another human being to consume. And it's almost like an exchange of energy. And I think that it definitely varies depending on the specific market and consumer demographics, that there will always be a divide. But I think over time, we'll definitely see an increase in consumers being curious about craft cannabis and how it's cultivated and demanding for those products.
Yeah,
I know
I'm sorry. This day and age, you see a lot of people like really paying attention to what they're eating and what they're putting in their bodies. So I totally agree. You're still gonna have those people that want that they don't really care, but you're gonna have more people start to like be conscious on what they're buying and what they're picking up.
Well, and individuals, like me, that's what I do, is I'm here to, speak for the plant to the people. And again, that exchange of energy, I do resonate on that, and how much care and love goes into this plant. And when we talk about it as a medicine, we are transferring those important terpenes and cannabinoids and energy to the other person to aid and to help in their healing. And we can't forget that. And for me personally, it will always be quality over quantity. It'll always be sustainable cultivation practices, honoring the INA, regenerative farming, companion planting. It all is in, the toolbox of wellness.
Agreed.
Regarding quality.
I love it.
Regarding quality, as long as we prioritize our medical program and we continue to invest our time and our energy and our own money into improving the medical program, its patients and caregivers, quality will always be the highest priority. And that will mean that the medical community will be leading the way in terms of quality. And 100% of patients deserve quality. So in terms of, talking about moving forward into the future, I would prefer myself to stay in the medical realm. I'm a healer, not a dealer.
Yeah. And also educating individuals about extraction processes and using non-invasive and non-chemical extraction processes. I kind of spoke just only about flower, but there's, concentrates and hash. So again, just, teaching consumers about those sustainable cultivation practices and the actual origin of the medicine. Know your grower. That's what I always preach. Know your grower.
Very important.
Especially with the 329 program. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about having a caretaker or knowing your caretaker. You know what he's doing, you know how he's growing, and it just makes it that much easier to smoke, eat, however you consume it.
Yep.
Yeah, especially if the patients are actually, coming to the garden and participating in the grow themselves. They're there, right there. They don't just know what the grower's doing, they're helping them do it, and they've already got that connection to the plant.
Yeah, we can follow something like that going into legalization, then it just turns more into a network instead of a business. That's beautiful. Mm-hmm.
In relation to the previous question, connecting quality to licensure, no limits on farm gate operators. So any farmer who's growing organic food, they should be allowed to grow cannabis as well. And I think farmers who grow organic food will be more inclined to follow the best management practices to ensure quality control for their medical cannabis.
Food and cannabis, as far as the criteria in which you grow it, is completely different. Cannabis is very, very more under the microscope on cleanliness and how you grow it rather than our food. Our food is way more lax. So, yeah, food farmers can try to jump in on the cannabis game. That's totally fine. But me having a grow shop, especially a grow shop next to Kunia, which is a high ag land, I see the farmers coming in and I see what they put into their food crops, which pass, and they're able to go on the shelves. So that transition of the food farmers, the industrial, not industrial, but the big food farmers, the big hectares and hectares of farmlands, for them to transition, and this is the problem I'm seeing, is cannabis requires so much care. And a lot of that care is overhead. It's expensive, sourced out nutrients. It's extensive work in your soil. So as a crop, I see food farmers having a hard transition. If they're not already doing so with cannabis, I find that's going to be a real, again, education is key to make sure that they can make the transition to food to medicine seamlessly.
And I think
Yeah,
that's why
it's tough too, because you have the heavy metals and different things on a lot of this old ag land. And so growing directly in the ground in some of these places is also a concern for traditional farmers. Not all, but some would definitely have to, thoroughly soil test and this and that. They're going to fail the heavy metals test on their first grow.
Totally. And our tests are very, very strict when it comes down to cannabis. I don't know, like I test my stuff and I'm like, whoa, dang, that was pretty thorough. You know what I mean? So I know for a fact that the strawberries out at Safeway don't get the same treatment as my cannabis. So that's something I would try and steer. Like me personally, I would grow food totally fine, but I would have a special spot for my medicine. And I have a small farm, so I couldn't imagine how much it would have cost a big farm to operate, especially if you're talking about the economic problems of the price per pound dropping on the mainland. If we follow suit with big entities coming, there's no way cannabis will be even relevant in the crop. Just like Al was saying, yeah, cannabis is another crop, and it's going to be that way. It's going to be another crop. But it's not. Our test results on our test requirements on cannabis is very strict. So extra care is going to need to go in for cannabis than our food.
I agree. And, I hate to jump in right here because I'm sure somebody has something else that they wanted to say, but we're approaching our 5-minute mark here where we need to be wrapped up by. And so I just wanted to say thank you to all of the panelists for joining us. I do wish we had more time to get some of these questions answered, but I think we had a good discussion. And if anyone has, 30 seconds or less, last little message they wanted to give everyone, feel free to jump in and do so.
It was an honor. Thank you, everybody, for having me and letting me speak. It's a beautiful community. Appreciate all of you.
I echo that. It's an honor, and it's just so great to see us all come together again as a collective voice. I really, truly believe that we can help to shape the future of the cannabis industry in Hawaii and really make it our own. We just need to get together and have one voice.
Yeah, give thanks to the Hawaii Cannabis Patients Union for doing this. This is Empress Modupe on the Big Island. And I want to give thanks to all the panelists for your insightful contributions. But as a OG on the island from '84, I say that let's not forget the OGs who've been impacted by the war on drugs. So don't leave us out, Let's talk about reparatory and restorative justice. Let's define it. Let's not just talk the talk next year. Let's see, we've been walking the walk by getting the people more proactive, getting them to register to vote, getting them to talk to their legislators about what really impacts their lives. Like, for example, there's enough OGs and enough kupunas who use medical cannabis and are affected by these federal laws that can impact on the benefits that they receive, such as their social security, their public assistance, and some of them can't even get a medical license because they can't afford the price of going to the doctors. All you doctors up in here, you should be giving away these medical licenses to the people who need it. All right? This is a Rastafari woman whose family has been impacted here on this island. Uno just talk about Kanaka. Kanaka means a person, a human being. We're all humans, and you need to recognize the BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, right? People of color, which includes the Hawaiian. Being Hawaiian is not a race. We are all humans here. So let's get some reparatory and restorative justice for those most adversely impacted by these laws, these unjust laws. Let's change the laws that can help Hawaiians get back their land. We all oppressed people on this planet, all right? BIPOC people, Africa, Asia, right here in the Americas. Hawaii is captured land. Don't forget that, all right? And we are all here since 1984, all right? So if you want to know about me, check out We Cooking _ with Cannabis 360.
Okay, thanks, Empress. It's cool till you start selling something. I
Hey,
appreciate
Brett.
everybody. We've run over time, and we need to make time for our policy discussion. So
I just want, can I
guys, it
say
was
one more
really-
thing, Brent?
it was really an honor to have you guys here. And of course, Alex, 30 seconds. Thank you.
Mahalo everybody for the opportunity to share. All of us need to be growing. When I say growing food and medicine, I'm talking about your farm, Kale, and my farm. People gotta come directly to us. They don't need the dispensary, right? This is medicine over money that we're talking about. And we are the market. We are the market. We don't need them. We got each other. And yeah, that's what's gonna get more people farming. The medicine is sexy and the medicine heals. So that's what we need, everyone growing medicine and food. Medicine and food, ½ acre, 1 acre, 2 acres. Everybody farms part-time. Nobody farms full-time. We shouldn't be putting that burden on one person or one family. This is why farmers become depressed and they commit suicide and they take their own life. It's because it's a heavy burden to carry. And I know all you farmers on here, they carry that burden. It's part of us. We wake up and we do it. We don't take no vacations. We can't, because nobody else can come in and substitute for us. The reason why the dispensary is failing is because they don't have a community. They never built a community. And that's why the people aren't going to them and spending their money. It's their fault that they're not succeeding. It's not ours. And they shouldn't be bailed out. I see you, Carl. Mahalo, Empress, for everything. I saw your comments that you was typing. Yes, we're all one people and we all do this for the same reason. And that's why it's us right here in this conversation and those guys are not part of this. So mahalo to all of you for being here. It's medicine first and foremost. We're healers, not dealers. And we can do this without them. Aloha.
Yeah. So thanks, guys. Girls, thank you, Alexis. Thank you for joining in. Sorry we kind of stacked the panel with a bunch of guys, but we'll get more women who grow in the next panel. Shoot.
Hello, Brent.
Hola, Kako. Thank you. And Andrew, thank you again for moderating that panel. Thank you, Matchmaker Genetics. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Brent, for having me.
And we're going to start.
Thank you, Brent, for having me.
Thank you, sir. Without further ado, I wanted to ask a few questions. Mark, Wendy, do you guys want to tackle these?
Try, sure.
Okay.
What have you got?
So one question I had, and then I'll ask questions from other people, is it's often challenging for patients to testify in Hawaii for a lot of reasons, right? From being bedridden to being medicated for pain. And then, we have this practice sometimes in the legislature, which seems to be writing a bill, gaining support for the bill, and then just before the critical decision making, the bill gets changed, right? So just a single word in a bill getting changed from shall to may, for example, can really affect it. So if we're asking for something and the word is the department may do something instead of it shall do something, the bill becomes ineffective, more like a resolution than a law. So is anyone aware of a way to expand the window of opportunity to testify before legislative committees? For example, is this the same in Maine where you're usually given about 24 hours to testify? And I'll let you go first, Mark.
Yeah, so just real quick, I want to introduce myself and mahalo to all of you for participation, and Brent and Jason and all of you for the invitation to contribute, what I hope I have learned in our experience way on the other side of the globe here in Maine. And also just to clarify that we are the Maine Craft Cannabis Association, but we're a part of the National Craft Cannabis Coalition. So, I mean, it's all word salad with these groups. So just to put that out there. But to answer your question, I think it happens in every state house where there is especially issues where there's a significant amount of money involved. Your representatives, it's always a mixed bag. There's folks who are there for the right reasons. There's folks who are there for the wrong reasons. There are folks who just happen to get there. And each one of those people has their own relationship with service. And what you have to remember is a lot of those people are servants, but the entity that they belong to is not a servant. It does not serve the people. So, it's not to point this or paint this in a discouraging way that no, there's no way to get more access. But when you strategize about how you want to impact the political process, if you go in trusting that there is a goodwill towards your point of view from the larger body, you're going to be disappointed because there is not. The only goodwill that you have comes from the individuals. And so the work of advocacy, aside from testifying, and just to kind of point this in a more positive direction, is given that your advocacy and your testimony, they really shouldn't be viewed as discrete acts, because your testimony that day or your commitment to vote or your appearance at a library speaking event that politician has and your side conversation that you may have with them about this issue, each one of those is an opportunity to testify. And the actual structure of testimony taking in the legislature, whoever asked this question, or this I guess is your question, Brent, it's a very savvy answer, or a very savvy question, because the whole system is actually designed to suppress your participation in it. So that's both a really realist, I guess, cynical take that yes, it is designed to suppress participation, but given that that's the case, you have to take the conversation outside of the legislature as well. And so I just encourage everybody to think about ways to strategize doing that on the ground.
So the question was, is anyone aware of a way that we can expand the window of opportunity to testify, given that, we oftentimes have 24 hours before critical decision making to really, it's a little different for us in Hawaii because we can't just carpool over to the Capitol and get involved in hearings. So a lot of times we have to meet this specific date to testify, and yeah, is there a way to expand that?
Okay, so I'm going to address this because I also see that former Senator Espero is also here. So the actuality is we have provided, I guess, since COVID, with the opportunity to have even more access. Okay, before we did not have Zoom participation. Now we have Zoom participation, and even with the COVID crisis now being considered no longer an emergency, at least for the Senate, I don't know for the House, at least for the Senate, we have allowed to continue on with Zoom participation. The problem occurs with the time, and I don't know how to get around this, except I noticed that the House, when doing the one of their more controversial bills, actually had hearings during the weekend. And those of you who came to my hearing, I was pretty fast. And I see Jason Hanley here, he knows that too, because he participated in all of my hearings. So he was informed, and he brought in a whole bunch of people to participate in all of my hearings. But I try to keep oral testimony down to 1 minute. So I really want people to provide me with written information. And those, in fact, and I see Mark Barnett nodding their head, those, in fact, who have provided me with written testimony, they were the ones who I've actually, and I told Jason this before, if you tell me how to amend and you give me the actual language, and if it's really specific, you're going to see it in my bills, because you folks already know I'm already pro-cannabis oriented. But if all you're going to do is just grumble about it, then it's pretty difficult for me to either amend the bill, because there's usually good parts to a bill. So I want to pass the good parts of it. But so I really want specifics, and Jason knows this, and I think Mark does too. If you give me specifics as to which parts of the bill are good and which parts of the bill are bad, and I really want it in writing. And I really want to, as far as with me, especially if I know that you folks are interested in bills, I have no control as to the other chairs, as to when they're going to time their hearings. But with the Senate, so long as, and usually I'm the first committee for cannabis bills, I will let you know way beforehand, way before the two, and I tell you to prep it up, because I don't know the exact date and time, but if you get the written testimony, so as soon as I give you a date and time, you just upload it within that window, then that is how I personally can help you folks out. The process itself is difficult because we've got 60 days. We've got like less than 2 weeks for all bills, and we've got thousands of bills that have to go to the first committee. And so that's why you have this really short window. And unless we constitutionally expand it beyond the 60 days, I don't know how we're going to get around the 24, 48-hour window. I'm just letting you know for the proponents of my bills, okay, what I do to help the advocates personally. But I can't, anything beyond that, I really can't. I'm not much help. And at least as far as the Senate, if you have the written testimony in for the first committee, the second committee reads the first testimony. You don't need to resubmit. I know the House, because I was in the House, requires you to resubmit each time. They're far more problematic to testify to, but easier in the Senate. Okay,
Yeah,
I hope that answers your question. And it's not a panacea, but it's what I can do personally to help you folks out.
Thank you for those insights, Senator. It's much appreciated. And I pulled former Senator or Senator Aspero into the conversation. Did you have any input on that question, Senator?
Well, at the end of the day, and thank you for doing this and for the invitation, but at the end of the day, it's all about preparation and planning. And you know what you want when you're starting, and you just need to try to get that message to all the legislators, because once they get inundated with these thousands of bills, your bill now just takes the number. But you know, the idea of course, unifying, working together, having a coalition is powerful, and the way that you're going to get things done. And even with that 24, 48-hour notice, lawmakers know what you're asking for. Once it's in there, it's in there. And they can't play dumb. They can't play stupid. They know what they want to pass or what they might pass. And hopefully your advocacy and lobbying will be successful. And we're getting close. I'm surprised. I thought that we would have passed legalization by 2023, and I left in 2018. But yeah, you know, we're just taking baby steps, but we're getting closer, and we'll see what next year brings.
Yeah.
The issue of collectives, though, and social equity, I think those are two key issues that something should have in a bill, as well as the issue of homegrown, and how do you deal with that with a commercial market.
Right. Thank you for that, Senator. I know we really.
Brett, I want to point something else out. One of the things that well before I think the interim session before I got elected, I know that Senator Aspero and Representative Bellotti went to all the various islands and did a whole informational briefing prior to getting the medical dispensary bill up. So what I did participate in prior to this last session, and I know Wendy Gibson was part of it too, and I know Jason Hanley participated. I don't know who else is on here, but I'm just seeing names that I remember popped up, was the whole dual use. And I remember you being part of it too, Brett, or the Hilo version of it. The dual use task force. And all I'm saying is a lot of these bills, before they actually, although it seems really short, the 24, 48-hour window, a lot of it is already kind of predetermined before the 24, 48-hour window.
Right.
Because of all of those informational briefings you guys we're talking about. So like the dual use task force, even though it doesn't look like much was done this session, I'm going to let the people who participate on it know that I'm making the Attorney General read those recommendations, okay, while we are trying to see what we can do this upcoming session.
Cool.
So whenever you see a public hearing, is all I'm saying. Whenever you see a public hearing, please participate in it, because we record it and we do, at least some of us, at least me, will look at it and take into account what you say.
Great. Thank you. So I want to jump back into our 30-second rule, if you don't mind. I hate to do that to you, Wendy. Can we?
Yeah, I have a lot to say about this, actually.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay.
This was the first question. I've got.
But I agree with Senator Aspero that it's prepping and planning. I used to be an organizer with the Drug Policy Forum of Hawaii. We had a mailing list. We had an executive director who would look over all the legislation and help analyze it and give people talking points. We'd send it out to our mailing list. We helped them understand how to write a letter in the first place. And I would suggest that people make templates ahead of time. If you know what committees that the bill's going to be going to, just start writing a letter, put the header on it. And once that the first hearing is done, go back and read all of the testimony that's been submitted, and that will help you see what the opposition is saying and what supporters are saying. And, so to help you write the testimony. So I think that's, every voice does matter, and form letters are okay, but it's really better if you can personalize it. It's better if you also, be better organized from the very beginning. We used to create one pagers and go down to the ledge and just give them out to the legislators and say, this is what's, we like about the bills, what we don't like about the bill, that kind of thing. So just being able to carry the messages and educate people about what the bill's about, and as it changes, to be able to stay on top of it. So, we need leaders who have the time to do such things. Anyway,
Yeah,
that's
okay.
my 2 cents.
Okay. All right, we're gonna try harder on the next question for the 30 seconds.
No worries.
Hey, did you want to weigh in on that question? Do you know what the question was? I can. Oh, I'm sorry, you're still muted.
Oh, no, I think it was answered pretty thoroughly. And yeah, and I agree with Wendy, organization.
Right on. And we can do yes or no answers as well. And we'll start, we'll just, this question applies in Maine as well, Mark. So I think that you're up next. I'm just going to go in a circle on my screen around the videos. And so what if, is anyone aware of any departmental policies that have been updated? In Hawaii, it would be since our first medical law, that have been updated to consider patient rights. Have any departmental policies been updated? All right, can you address that, Mark? And for Maine or Hawaii, if you know.
I certainly would defer to folks who have been dealing with Hawaii and the trajectory, especially because when you talk about, it sounds like rules, which are generally less visible to the public, they're not going through, the legislature. I think the only thing that I would say about that is one of our biggest victories in Maine for defending our very patient-friendly and very local-oriented program was in changing how rules in the program could be made such that the legislative branch maintained significant oversight, even of the departmental level changes, so that the levers of influence were at least harder to grab. Because if you only need to know the department head and a couple of folks, it's very easy to run the show in terms of how the programs are administered. And when you have the legislature and folks like Senator San Buenaventura, who are looking for their representatives and their constituents' input, that is an important voice to make sure is still in the room. So, I would have to defer on the more specific to Hawaii and Ed, but I am really fascinated to learn if there has been progress on that front.
Right on. Thank you for that, Mark. And you're up next, Senator San Buenaventura.
Okay, so I'm sorry, you need to recap the question.
Yeah, of course. What if, are you aware of any departmental policies that have been updated to reflect medical cannabis laws?
Okay, the answer is no, not right now.
Okay.
Okay, I just want to let you know, we are pushing the Department of Health to do an update. And all I'm going to say, because it's such a general question, we did pass one medical cannabis act bill this session, only one out of the how many, about the 20 or so that were introduced. And one of that, that one basically liberalized the waiting room to allow for non-329 cardholders to at least be in the waiting room. So it's not considered a felony. So I gotta look more into that, but that was, and also I think I was hoping that that would also start moving towards a more horizontal rather than this vertical, super expensive and monopolization type system we have now. So that was the one bill that passed. So that kind of answers your question.
Cool. I have a follow-up also to that bill, HB 1082. And I'm Senator Aspero, you're probably not familiar with any policy changes that have happened interdepartmentally within the state since medical cannabis program started. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious though, like drug testing, has that been addressed by the state in any way?
Yeah, right. Other objectives could be public outreach or the way that patients are communicated with, ADA compliance, any issue that, works differently for patients, especially, and I'll just add on the next question, since it sort of highlights what we're talking about. HB 1082, if signed into law, will give the Department of Health 39 more opportunities for rulemaking authority. And because we rely so heavily on elected officials here in Hawaii to do the job on a different island for us, it would seem important to me that there were a set of policies that go along with that broad rulemaking authority. Can you comment on that, Wendy?
That there should be also policies set in motion?
Right, that some guidance for employees within a department to act in accordance with patient needs.
I'm not sure I understand your question. That there should be policies for employers or employees?
Yeah, so right. So an example is or could be advertising or promotional policies within the department. How, the language that's used, for example, to promote a testing lab, for example.
Well, there's so many policies that need to be changed. And so, and rules that need to be changed. I hardly even know where to start talking about it. We need a lot of work. There's a lot of work to be done, and we've been picking at it for years. And
yes.
glacial pace. A few successes here and there, but the problems are still. The patient's issues are still pretty much the same. And, maybe we need to try a different approach. Get some more backing for Dr. Otto's plan to get the DEA to give us a Schedule I exemption and just, stop all this mess. It's just.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm getting at.
The federal and state conflict is the source of pretty much all these messes.
That's exactly what I'm getting at, because HCR 132 was, passed unanimously by legislation. And then I guess the policy of the department is to seek help to find reasons why they should not follow that resolution as requested. So, what's the policy that says that they would seek guidance from the Attorney General rather than seeking guidance from patients themselves? If there is such a thing, I'm not really sure.
I mean, I would like to see some kind of rule that the Department of Health has to have some sort of patient issues liaison, person to like your patient's union, just meet with them once a month or something. And find out what's happening out in the real world of patient struggles with growing, with, just and bills that keep coming through to try to shut down your right to grow your own medicine, or shut down the collectives like they did in California. We need to protect our patients from what's been happening in the other states.
Right. Yeah, there's there's
HIPAA,
federal HIPAA guidelines that should be followed, and if the policies haven't been updated, then has anyone actually been trained on HIPAA standards or compliance? That may be something that you could help us understand, May. Are you aware of any policy interaction as a person that's certified to recommend licenses, or
for policy updates that benefit patients? I mean, not really in a while. I mean, these last couple of bills that have passed really, it's like we got waiting room, we got pre-rolls for the dispensaries this year. Last session, I don't even remember what passed, but there haven't, all of the patient specific ones, there were a lot that were introduced this session that were really good, but most of them didn't get hearings or got one. So
gotcha. Okay.
I would, if I don't mind me just jumping in for a second to follow up on something that Wendy said, and there are two questions I think that are kind of being asked here, and one is what has happened, and the other is what should be happening, or like what are the issues and how do those get to the right people? And even just reading the chat, there's a lot of frustration over whether this dual use task force or this legislation heard the right voices. And one thing that we did, not to say that it's a perfect solution, but one thing that we did in Maine, and this was in the same bill that we put restrictions on the rulemaking authority of the Department of Oversight, was we required that before they made their next suggestion, overhaul, whatever it be, of the rules, not the law, the rules, which is the department's purview, that they were required to meet with and discuss those subjects with a set group of individuals, which of course is challenging because you have to make sure those are the right people, and there becomes fierce competition for whose voice gets to be included. But at the end of the day, when we're working in government policy, you just have to do the best that you can within the strictures. And so that is at least a forum that maybe, and I think that was kind of the idea of the dual use task force, was to collect as much information and give people an outlet. But we put it in the law that the department literally couldn't create new rules without that process, because we knew that that process would allow us, if we felt we were being steamrolled, which at the time that was being attempted, that gave us a lot of press, and that gave us a lot of room to express those realities in a public forum that had to be recorded and had to be, legally, they were legally binding rules about interacting with the public. So that's just, when it comes to policies that can help support the direction of policies, that was one I found in the moment was quite powerful as a meta strategy. And I think, again, this is back to Wendy's also comment about, and May's comments about organization and strategizing and planning ahead. The more that all of these diverse factors can be built into an action plan well ahead of time with clear goals, the more effective all of your outreach is just going to be, because your opponent is doing that. Therefore, you must also do that. And it's a hard thing to get your voice heard, even if you don't have enemies. And, ultimately, the government, as the senator referred to, is seeing thousands of bills. So you need a really effective, clear strategy to get there.
Yep. So if we don't control the message, they control the message. And that's just, we need to figure out how to have a collective voice and carry the messages through every way that we can. Speakers bureaus, find venues. I'll come speak, just, I don't have a place to do it.
Well, this is a good place right now to come up with a future idea about the way that we want to invest in policies and decision making that could lead to better rules, that could lead to better laws. And so if we could just, I think we're unifying a little bit here. And And I think there's a broader opportunity to get on the same page, like you guys are saying.
Maybe coordinate with other groups that are doing similar work, you know, like on drug policy, like the Community Alliance on Prisons, you know, I mean, there's so much overlap to what they're working on. You know,
Yeah,
with
it's so
prison
intersectional.
reform. Yeah.
That's right.
So,
That's
you
right.
know, let's figure out a way to.
ACLU even, I mean, you know, national groups don't always have the most detailed interest in local issues, but some of those folks may be better connected to the right people. And, you know,
Well, Americans for Safe Access has a no patient left behind program, and it's just, I don't know what's happening with it. It just, it's like it's fizzling out, but I don't know why. But, you know, certainly they came out really strong with, you know, we got to protect patients.
So how would everyone feel
If I
about
may speak,
doing these quarterly?
if I may speak, I think we need to organize one organization that will be able to, all patients can come to it and be unified where all these answers can be answered. And we need funding and we need lobbying. But we've been talking about this for years and years, and we all are saying the same message, but there are no actions. You know, I listened to all of you, and Senator Benaventura, we did talk and we did submit multiple testimonies, and you guys didn't listen to us. All those opposing testimonies, the bills continued to go through, and unfortunately, some of them died that weren't right for the patients. So you're right, we need to organize better and all that, but to be honest with you, we are all talking the same thing, but we need to see action rather than we're just talking. And thank you all for organizing this.
I would just say, as an outsider, you guys actually did have a lot of action, and sometimes the powerful actions aren't necessarily the proactive ones because the nature of the situation requires defense. And what I saw in the ability that I had to participate this session was that the defense showed up and people showed up, and that was a major accomplishment. So it is also important to recognize what is working, because that is what inspires people to come together and feel invested in wanting to participate. You know, one of the challenges with organization, you know, and factions and all of that, is that everyone is a person and everyone has emotions and they have relationships with each other. And, you know, it's discouraging to work in cannabis policy. I think everyone who's involved here knows that. And there's a lot of losses and there's a lot of setbacks. So definitely hold on to and celebrate your gains. And I think you actually had a pretty amazing, you know, like session, despite what looked like was already kind of a cooked game was going to move forward, and it didn't. And I think that's powerful.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm going to switch gears and go back to Senator San Buenaventura. I have a question here. Where can I learn about penalties for breaking laws? Asking for a friend.
Okay, I saw that. And the problem is, if you're in Hilo, there's self-help. You can go talk to a lawyer that way directly, because there's different laws and there's different penalties per law. So that's too general a question. I mean, for instance, one of my bills was a decriminalization of drug paraphernalia, which surprisingly Governor Ige signed. So that one, the penalty for just possession of drug paraphernalia was down to $150. But most of the time, if you talk to police officers, when they arrest somebody, it's not just drug paraphernalia, it's something else, right? So,
okay.
Yeah, so each crime has a different penalty.
Has anyone else stumbled across a list of penalties like they just recently passed in Minnesota, where they created a law and then they actually told you what the penalty was for breaking the law? Has anyone seen a list like that? No. Is anyone is there an attorney available that actually knows that?
If I may, you know, there are national organizations, national cannabis organizations and a lot of them in the DC area. And those organizations and entities can be great resources, especially on a national scale.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, we've reached out. Yeah, I think the ACLU is the first organization that I reached out to get an answer to that question. And basically it's just, what if I have 11 plants instead of 10, and not knowing the answer to that is really scary for people that want to get involved, right? Because if they ask me what the penalty is, and I say, I don't know, somewhere between a slap on the wrist and life in prison, it's difficult. And I say, I don't say life in prison lightly for having one extra plant. A lot of the people that work with the plant are freedom loving people that would not do very well in a prison or in a jail environment. So anyway,
if
so,
I could interject. Hi, I'm new.
Yeah, hold on. I'm sorry. Can you introduce yourself
ladies,
and tell us who you are?
Hi, sorry. If I could interject, I'm new. This is my first time here. But
okay, can you introduce yourself?
Once a month. My name is Lehua Sutterfield. I'm an account executive for PRMG. I'm not trying to advertise myself. That's not what I'm here for. But I do a once a month Zoom meeting with the Women of Cannabis Chamber of Commerce out of Colorado. I would love if you guys would like any information on that. I can share the information with you guys. But on this meeting, we have CPAs, we have attorneys. I mean, we have account executives who handle marijuana money. Hi, but it's just putting it out there. Instead of once a quarter, why not once a month? I mean, this is something we're trying to move forward in Hawaii, right? What is it going to do if we're only doing this quarterly? And what are all these women on this call here doing if they're not being part of a Chamber of Commerce conversation? Just saying.
Well, thank you for that, Lehua. I appreciate it.
Can I say something?
Yeah, of course.
So I was in the room when we started the Hawaii Patients Union.
Is that Will? Can you introduce yourself, Will? And please just keep it to 30 seconds. That's all I'm asking.
I'm allowed to say
17
something?
more questions.
Okay, yeah. The frustration is real, and coming together is really the key, in my opinion, to creating what we want to create as a legalization presentation and a bill, right? We're all working separately, and it's very frustrating to work separately. It's frustrating to work together. We had monthly meetings for many years with the Hawaii Patients Union, and we were able to accomplish quite a bit. And here we are still going. Brent is still going. And, you are correct. So we already have somewhat of a platform to unite as patients. Joy has been critical to the advancement of cannabis in this state and is a good resource. As long as, in my experience, you present her exactly with what you want to accomplish. The Hawaii legislature is very complicated and convoluted and very frustrating to stay focused on the promotion of the plant, right? It is plant medicine, in my opinion. And we make it so much more complicated in the legislation. As a plant, it's very complicated, right? And very beneficial, and the healing is real. And that's why we have been doing it for so many years, many of us. So yes, I support what Lehua is saying. and Joy is saying, and May is saying, and Wendy, and Jason, and Mark, and Will, etc.
Thank you. I
So,
appreciate that.
it might be time to move on to how we get there. For being here, everybody.
Most definitely. Or we could talk about the future. So what I'm really trying to get us to do is not to get bogged down in the now or the past. Really looking for some insights into the future. So I'm going to jump to another question. Unless someone, May, you didn't address that. Did you want to say anything? Okay. The specific laws, I'm going to skip this specific law penalties. Can anyone in 30 seconds or less provide your insights into what you want to see in the future for educational programs around the medical cannabis program? And Mark, can we start back off with you again?
I feel like your circle is a little skewed towards me. I'm the, over here in Maine. And again, I think a lot of this is specific state by state, but almost no state makes any educational resources available. And then when they do, they are 1000% focused on drug war messaging. And they are, literally still stereotyping, and there's so much stigma loaded in that about the dangers of cannabis. That's again, it's like this is a current theme that we are dealing with every day, and many people dealt with their lives and livelihoods for the past decades trying to get to where we are now. I think as far as education, you cannot rely on the state. You cannot rely on the department. They are by nature a sort of backwards looking organization, or a right now looking organization. And they're also just slow moving. And that's okay, because decisions shouldn't be taken rashly. But when it comes to the dissemination of knowledge, you really don't want to rely on the government for that. It's not to say that the government can't have a role in maybe suggesting, where those educational resources can be made available, and what, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to get too much into that, but you really have to focus on educating the folks that you want to hear yourself. And in a lot of ways, your job, all of you, your job is to educate the people that this person is asking, how do we get them to educate us? You're going to have to continue to educate them. And it's a long process. It's a frustrating process. It's one that has no end. But the more that you all can be educated, and it's specifically to the political process, to build a more grounded rather than emotional approach to the way you structure your arguments, educating yourself about how you're going to sound, or what your opponent may be able to pick apart from what you've said. Expressing yourself is important, but educating yourself and saying things that can't easily be swatted aside. Again, we're dealing with stigma. We're dealing with decades of hostile ideas that are in people's minds towards everything that you say. So I would turn that around and say, educate yourself so that you may educate the government.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Really good point. Senator Joy, have you heard about any educational programs that might be coming down the pike that might help us understand and use the medical program?
No, I hate to say it, but I think the other panelists probably have more, especially since I think it's going to be changing. I'm hoping that it's going to be changing sometime soon, now that we have a more pro-cannabis oriented governor and administrator rather than previously.
And could we come up with our own educational program? What are the chances of one of these advocacy groups actually providing what we need for education. Please,
Yes. Can I jump in?
did you have anything to add, Will?
No, no.
Oh, okay.
Yes, yes. Amy, take it away.
No, it's Wendy.
Oh, Wendy. Okay, Wendy.
So I'm a cannabis nurse educator, and my vision is to get medical cannabis education into the nursing schools, and have been making a little bit of headway on that. The American Cannabis Nurses Association and the Cannabis Nurses Network are working on getting recognized as a specialty in nursing and getting this curriculum into the nursing schools, so that we can have healthcare professionals who can actually help patients use their medicines, and patients aren't going to be afraid to talk about it. And maybe patients can even demand that their healthcare professionals be trained in the endocannabinoid system, or yeah. So, when they're choosing their physician, they can ask them, do you know about the endocannabinoid system? And if they don't, then maybe you want to find another doctor. So
That's literally what I said at the beginning of this whole presentation. That's exactly what I was saying. Educated patients who deserve educated clinicians.
I do. So anyway, that's my vision, my 30 seconds.
A strong effort to educate lawmakers should happen also.
True.
Happy to come up there and sit on anybody's lap and talk to them about anything cannabis. Invite me right over. I'm right there for you.
It's my favorite subject. I never stop talking about it. Ask any of my friends.
This side of the table has to take that initiative. Don't expect them to invite you. This side has to take the initiative to educate.
Yeah, lobby days, showing
100.
up, reaching out to individual, but also being there present at the Capitol during times when they're, looking for, you see that happen with other organizations. They need their message across, so they have materials and they have people present and they're tabling. It's a wonderful building too. Like, that was such a beautiful place, so much better than the main legislature. So you might as well go have a party there.
So Wendy, I would invite you to help formulate like a resolution to come up for like the pharmacy school to come up with some kind of curriculum, because
they're already doing that. They're already doing it. They're already in the process of building it. Dr. Novotny is already in the process of working on that.
Then that's wonderful then. Okay.
For how long though? I think I met with him like 8 years ago.
No, this is Dr. Rachel Novotny, and
Oh, a
she's
different
been
one.
working on it in the
Okay.
last 2 years.
Okay.
May, did you want to weigh in
No,
on
but I'll
the educational question?
still be happy to.
Just my I do disagree with the statement. I actually think it should be provided by the Department of Health, be widely disseminated. It doesn't have to be authored by the Department of Health. I think having it authored by somebody like Amy or Wendy or some of these other like really good community educators would be amazing. But I do think it needs to be disseminated by the DOH. If you look at Canada, they have a really great public education for cannabis that is for healthcare providers and for patients. Because leaving it up to most people, if they're not getting it from their provider, which we do a ton of education, they're getting it from the dispensaries, and that's not a good option, period.
Right.
Thank you. Lots of inconsistencies. It's not that there's bad bud tenders, it's that it's inconsistent. There's really amazing ones in there. So it's the inconsistency. There needs to be somewhere that people can go that's safe, that's trusted. And so I think doing a resolution would be a great idea.
Yeah, right now they have a mandate to give to have some sort of educational program. And we asked them about including medical cannabis therapeutics in it. And they said, no, that's not what the mandate's for. It's just to teach patients about like the program. So
Right.
nothing to do with, yeah. The
Gonna
medical-
switch gears again. So this question came in from a friend of a friend that works in the county, and they're being told by their colleagues not to talk about cannabis because it's federally illegal. And I think this really speaks to the HCR 132 again, where we have asked the Department of Health to request a federal exemption from the DEA for patients in our medical program. Are they allowed to get a license for cannabis, and are they allowed to be fired if one of their employers find out in the county that they are in the medical cannabis program? And maybe we'll I don't want to go out of order now. You got me nervous, Mark, so I'll just go
No,
back
I'll
to
pass
you.
just to make sure that yeah.
Okay. Senator Joy.
So I gotta do a deep dive into it because I was one of the proponents of Dr. Otto's resolution, and I was hoping that the DOH would jump on it. But you're giving me food for thought, Brent. Basically, is the DOH's failure to pursue a federal exemption preventing the kind of research and education we need to go to help patients with cannabinoids? And I don't know the answer to that question, but if it is, then that is damn good reason as to why we should hold Department of Health's feet to the fire and do something about Dr. Otto's exemption request.
Yeah, and if I may, there are a couple of issues that are really close to me. I live up by the national park, and now that the lava is flowing, I have a lot of friends that want to go look at the lava, and they're absolutely shocked when I tell them that they cannot take their medicine with them. They're like, why can't I go to the park with my medicine? And I said, not because it's a park, because it's illegal in any county park, but the federal agents inside the national park are what you really want to fear. These are the guys that'll give you a federal prison sentence. So without any policy investment into our local police communicating with national park personnel, like they do with TSA, it's, you can't go camping in the park and medicate. So it excludes patients. More than that, though, if you live on the south end of our island, you can't drive to a dispensary through Volcano National Park legally. It's technically illegal to drive to one of our dispensaries in Hilo and then drive back through federal jurisdiction to go home. So I think that's a really good reason. And of course, then there's federal housing, there's federal employees. I didn't even mention those, but there's a lot of reasons for that federal exemption. Of course, sorry to interject my own thoughts there, but there are reasons for sure. Okay,
Well, patients can't bring their medicine.
I'm gonna push that a little bit further and take one more minute, if you don't mind. I've got a really special announcement before we jump into May Fuima Ono Po's social equity presentation. And I've been wanting to do this for years. We finally got the right team together. Our sponsors this year, including May, and including Karuailua Farms and the Cannabis Farms Alliance, have reserved the Palace Theater in Hilo, Hawaii, where we're going to specifically recognize all of our OGs in an award ceremony, and we're going to give out a bunch of awards. So we're going to the Hawaii Cannabis Awards Show, and we'll be selling tickets to the show. You can think of it as part talent show and part award ceremony. And we're going to have a really fun night in the Palace doing that. So that's the big special announcement for 2024, which is a Friday night. So it'll be Friday night in Hilo at the Palace Theater, June 14th, Medical Cannabis Day. Okay, that's my big plug. Cut me off. Okay, I'm sorry, Wendy. Yeah, we'll refocus it back. Do you remember the question? we were talking about employment, and then that sort of led
You're
down to
asking if
ACR
someone was
1.2.
allowed to get a license?
Yeah,
If it-
our county, and can they be fired if it's found out that they do have a license?
County employees, state employees, what?
I would think county or state. We know federal employees, just
I know
the
some
non-
state employees who are patients.
okay. And
So
and
I
do
don't,
they
I
do that
don't think they are, I don't even
secretively,
think they
or
drug test them.
like I know that some doctors, for example, that have patients that do get drug tested, that are state and county workers, what they do is they'll prescribe Marinol,
Oh,
and
right.
then they'll give them a cannabis license recommendation. So
Just to cover them if they, when they test positive. Yeah.
right, so they test positive, and then it's hard to tell if it's Marinol or if it's from vaping or something. I guess I don't know.
Sure.
But logically though, because it is legal in the state of Hawaii, they should not be fired for breaking any state of Hawaii or county laws.
You would think,
Yeah.
but
Right.
some of these employees actually carry guns. And so, you would have to choose then whether or not you would have a licensed firearm or use cannabis. And if you were doing that on the job, I would think it would be an automatic,
Right, but that's another matter though. Now you brought in guns. But if you take out the gun formula, what I said is logically, the state of Hawaii has a law that says you can use medical cannabis. So no one should be fired breaking any state of Hawaii laws.
Well, that's just
Gotcha.
not, that's,
Yeah.
I mean, they are being fired and yeah. Especially healthcare professionals.
There are states that have explicitly drafted language, and again, for ideas for how to improve the program from a patient perspective, maybe enshrining those very specific, like mandating certain behaviors that employers cannot take in response to use when you have a medical card could be something, I'm not as familiar with statute as some of the other participants, but I'm not sure that kind of explicit language is present. But there are states that have drafted that legislation to ensure that discrimination against cannabis patients can't be practiced, at least by state agencies. The former senator brought up federal issues are a whole different matter. Unfortunately, those are definitely beyond, necessarily the protection of the state. But I think if you focus on maybe within the state, you can strengthen those protections using the legislature.
And Wendy mentioned healthcare workers. If those healthcare workers work at a facility that receives federal funding, then I could see that could be used as a way to terminate an individual. But again, that's federal law, not state of Hawaii law.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So it's time to wrap it up. We're 10 minutes into our next presentation. So I still want to allow for some free-for-all open discussion at the end. And May has an excellent presentation to share with us. So let's just go with the 30-second rule, go around the circle and do any closing remarks. If there's anything that you would like for us to, anything that you would like for us to know that we haven't heard already, and let's try to aim it towards the future and towards unifying our voice going into the next session. We're going to start with you, Mark. Thank you.
And again, mahalo for this time, and I really appreciate all the feedback and the conversation. And I just want to, looking to the future, the first time I kind of became aware of what the situation and where you all were at with your laws and with the industry and how it was formed and the various camps, it was very strikingly familiar to me, because Maine was in the same position years ago, and some of the same actors who you all are very unhappy with in terms of who have pushed for the other laws and policies are the same people that we dealt with. And there is a playbook out there for how to capture cannabis markets, especially with limited licenses. And there are lessons that you all, whether you organize, whether there's 10 people who are passionate enough to stick together, can build on and incorporate into your tactics and your strategy to help you succeed against that blueprint. And, you know, I just want to reiterate a positive message also about that, which is there are many states that are way too far down the road to ever pull back any layers of the onion and redo it correctly. And I think that is not necessarily the case with Hawaii. There is an opportunity still to not have an industry captured entirely by large commercial interests. And, you know, just remember that. And there is like a passion and energy that you can feed on from still having that choice. Many of my friends who are in the industry in California, they're very bleak. They have this, you know, kind of attitude of, well, we can't fix anything. The state's too big. There's all this other problems and whatnot. And that is in many ways a reality that you don't yet share. So just like stay passionate and stay motivated, and you have the opportunity to do these things. What those things are going to be, that's what these forums are for, and great. But I just want to leave with that kind of positive message also. And thanks again, everyone, for your time. This is great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. That's very astute. And I think that some of those large players have moved into our space and are meeting with legislators. So thank you.
Oh, yes, they are absolutely, and they have been for years.
Can you mention any names?
Well, I mean, I don't want to necessarily, because essentially all of them are looking at you. You're a limited license market. So every one of them, that's their business model. So the acreage holdings, the Curaleaf, the, you know, specific, maybe more specific to Hawaii, there's some maybe Canadian players. I'm not in the boardrooms of these companies. I will point out that the lobbyists that are used by them are some of the same. So if you ever see Opus Consulting or you see Nucleus One Consulting, know that those folks are invested in creating a limited license market to then make money off of exploiting with these big players coming in. So there's other auxiliary vultures as well involved. You know, again, I don't know who's talking to whom, but just you have to know that all of those people are looking at your market because they see, oh, 8 licenses. Well, that's not the biggest state, but that's certainly a lot of money if it's only 8 of us. So, you know, they're there, but so are you, and you vastly outnumber them. And your government is going to ultimately be more responsive to you if you're organized and you're in their face in a positive way.
Thank you for that, Mark. I really appreciate your participation tonight. And everyone, please thank Mark for being up after midnight to be here. Thank you so much, and we love Maine. So aloha, anyone
Come on
else
and
that
visit.
might be watching from Maine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Senator Sambuena Ventura, any closing?
Okay, so I finally got to read the chats, and I want to be able to answer some of those questions. One was basically the caregiver law, and that's true. It's going to end. In fact, that was one of the anti-Jason Hanley bills that was in. I inserted in the extension and removing the deadline on the caregiving on that one. But as Jason knows, that bill died. So we got to reintroduce something that will remove that deadline for the caregiving. I am going to tell you, I had a lot of headwinds from the House, even though I was able to talk DOH into agreeing that the caregiving deadline should be removed. Okay. I also, one of the bills that I got DOH to agree on, but I got headwinds from the House, was the cannabis seeds and propagules, okay? Because we need those seeds in order to be able to self-grow, right? I hope to reintroduce those 2 bills. The other one I hope to reintroduce is to hopefully, let's go towards horizontal rather than vertical. That one I don't think I can get DOH to agree on, but frankly, it surprises me that I couldn't get the House to agree even after I got DOH to agree on those other 2, the caregiving deadline elimination and the propagules and seeds sale. But that's what we're moving towards, and I'm hoping that by decentralizing, by removing these monopolies, we could reduce the cost and have more access. Anyway, that's my plan for next year. Let's see what happens.
All right. Thank you so much. And thank you, Senator, for always showing up. You know, I know it's not always a great time for you, and I know it's late, but I sincerely appreciate it. And I know that everyone that's here tonight really appreciates your time too. So thank you all year long. Senator Sparrow.
Well,
thank you for joining us. I know it's spur of the moment.
I think you know, we're on the edge. You know, whether it's going to be next session or the session after, I really think we're on the edge. But the key is to, you know, I believe come up with 4, 5, 6 points collectively unified, one loud voice that says this is what a legalization bill should include. At the minimum, these 4, 5, 6 points, and then let the legislature expand from there. Because, I mean, there's support, but the intricacies and the complexities and just sometimes people being assholes in the legislature, you know, things don't happen. So, you know, Jason this year did well considering what was on the table. And that's a message. That is a strong message right there. So now seize that moment and come up with a bill for next year. Because I know there's a lot of people talking, but it could be more unified. It could be much more unified. And maybe having a community people's Congress in the fall, you know, could be a way to get hundreds in a room or in several rooms, along with lawmakers saying, this is what the people want. Quick question, is the AG going to put together a group or not to look into legalization? Is that a yes or a no?
Okay, so we're doing it informally, Will. There is no, we tried having a resolution and actually a working group passed this session. It didn't pass, so the House is doing it informally because one of the bills that passed the Senate but wasn't heard in the House was a phased-in approach for legalization. And the other bill that died in Ways and Means was when I just legalized 4 ounces of cannabis totally and expunged all possession of it. And that was radical, but you know, I wanted to see how far it went. But that could still be up in the air. And I wanted DOH to come up with rules as far as phasing it in. But House is talking to AG directly. We're talking to AG directly, but there's also the potential of any of those bills still being heard because it is 2-year session, right? I mean, 2-year biennium for the legislative session. So we still have a second year to hear the bills that wasn't completely passed this session.
There is nothing stopping this group right here from being the organizations of reaching out to the top 20 cannabis organizations, entities, whatever, in the state of Hawaii and saying, let's meet, let's craft a bill. This will be the people's bill, and then lobby like hell on that and see where that takes you. Like I said, come up with your top 4 or 5 issues and then let everything else, and that'll be the majority of it. Then if you want to have little minority positions, let that be the case. But don't say, well, here's Maine's bill, or here's California's bill, or here's Colorado's bill. Put together a bill and say, this is Hawaii's people's bill.
100%.
Nothing stopping you from doing that. Nothing.
100%. I hear a lot of people echoing the 5,000 square foot canopy at $2,500 a year offer for everyone, and that just seems to be the way to allow people to get licensed. So maybe that'll stick. And so, Wendy, I think you're next in the circle.
Okay, great. Well, I really want to hear what May has to say, so I'll be as brief as I can. So first of all, well, I am hopeful going forward that we can strengthen the medical cannabis program. I encourage everybody to get to know what the laws are. The Drug Policy Forum of Hawaii put out a pretty good booklet on that. I helped edit it, and it's only current up to 2021, but Brent can give you a copy of that, or if you send me an email, I'll send you an electronic version of it. So it's a guide to Hawaii's drug laws, medical cannabis laws. But as far as strengthening the program, I'm hoping to see some bills passed. Some of them from the dual use of cannabis task force recommendations that certifying providers should have some education, that we remove the list of qualifying conditions and let the practitioners decide which conditions patients should be able to use cannabis for. We need to codify a patient's right to grow their own medicine. And I also want to reintroduce a bill that I watched die a miserable death, which is compassionate use that would allow terminally ill patients to use their medicines in certain healthcare facilities. So I'm hoping to revive that bill. And that's pretty much it. But I am hopeful that we can help preserve our patients' rights.
Thank you, Wendy.
And things going forward with legalization.
Cannabis nurse Wendy Gibson has shown up to every single patient meeting that she has ever been asked to show up to. And we just love you so much. Thank you so much for being here again.
Sure.
Thank you. And before I go to May, I'd like to just give a shout out to Silent Maggie, who is doing the behind the scenes work that brought everybody together, the director of the Hawaii Patients Union. And thank Maggie for all of the work that she's been doing.
Yeah, Maggie.
Yeah, mahalo nui loa, Maggie.
Silent Maggie.
Okay. May Fuima'ono Po from Aliyah Cannabis Clinic. Do you have closing remarks, and then we'll jump into your social equity presentation?
I just thank you, Maggie. Thank you, Cliff. Thank you for having this, and I'm excited for this next session. I think that we actually have a lot of power moving forward, so it'll be awesome.
Good.
Okay, so I am going to really try to stick to the time limit. So I'm going to be talking about social equity in Hawaii and in cannabis. These are my disclosures. Malia Cannabis, board member for lots of equity groups nationally and locally. What is social equity at its core? It's justice and fairness and social policy. Why does Hawaii need social equity? A brief history of Pakalolo in our state. Of course, we couldn't have 80 type of equity talk without talking about who got us here and why. So the ever present Harry Anslinger, who really brought the drug war to our shores. And of course, Hawaii has had one of the most aggressive eradication programs in our nation, starting with Green Harvest, which started in Hawaii Island in the 70s and expanded statewide in 1980. Hawaii also had the first, one of the first medical cannabis bills in our nation. This is why you have a 329 card. So if you've ever wondered, why do I randomly have a green card or a blue card that's called a 329 card? It's because of this particular legislation. And it's actually, if you read through it, it's pretty similar to what we have now. But it was section 329. Then we got
really serious when our AG did a publication and declared Hawaii a high intensity drug trafficking area. This is when we saw Operation Wipeout, which probably was one of the most aggressive. They had taken Black Hawk helicopters and retrofitted them. And so instead of like the guns, you know, it was loaded up with glyphosate. They would fly low, they would spray the cannabis and then come and cut it down. So this is kind of where we have come from in 2013. And I do want to say that since we saw decriminalization, since the decrim bill was passed, we've seen a huge drop. And it went from arrests like something like 900 to like 200 in 2021. So that's huge. And then we had an equity bill passed. So in 2022, Hawaii passed an equity bill asking the Drug Policy Forum to study social equity and provide recommendations for Native Hawaiians and those affected by the war on drugs. So what is social equity, and specifically, what is social equity within the cannabis space? So from ACHEM, we really focus on the 4 pillars, which are economic, environmental, human, and social. But what it boils down to is really these 2 huge tenets, which are criminal justice reform and creating an equitable cannabis industry. So I can talk about it more in depth, but this is really just kind of the basics. So for criminal justice reform, any type of legalization, or even now, these are really, really important. And I feel like these are huge sticking points. Automatic expungements and decriminalizing possession and personal cultivation, and also investing in and repairing these impacted areas. We know where these impacted areas are. And then what does it look like in the cannabis space? So there's a lot that kind of goes into it, but some of the basics are really defining what qualifies for social equity and what those benefits are. But one of the huge issues is creating fair and effective regulations and regulating bodies. This was one of, a lot of people had issues with the regulatory boards that were proposed within this last session, with good reason. So what could that look like? So now with medical, like with what we have, it's really protecting what we have and really keep Hawaii growing, keep our farmers and our cultivators growing, preserve patients' rights, collectives and caregiving rights, expanding decrim, and also expanding the ability, not only for the sunset date, but expanding caregivers' ability to grow for more than one patient, making sure that this study for the Drug Policy Forum is actually funded and able to be completed, and protection for workers' rights. I know that Wendy has worked on several task force and has made a bunch of great recommendations when it comes to working rights, going back probably over a decade now. So it's not for lack of trying and lack of bills being introduced, but something really important. So adult use. So what are some tenets that could be used for equity in Hawaii? Because it's going to be definitely different. So, and I will address the DHHL. They have a stance on it. So I'll show that right after that. For people who don't know, it's Department of Hawaiian Homelands. So they have the lowest barrier of entry when it comes to licensing for cultivation, using percentage of taxes to fund community processing hubs
So this will not only encourage small business, but it will also decrease environmental strain because we do live on an island. We do have limited resources. Again, canopy limits, direct farm to consumer sales. So it's called Farmgate in Canada. They've written policy about it. It's a really, really cool, interesting program. We're also seeing it in New York. New York is having farmers markets starting, this month. So there's models out there. Absolutely no more vertical licensing, with the exception of DHHL. And this is probably one of the most important, is the regulatory bodies must have representation from every outer island. So not just a bunch of people from Oahu dictating for the state, but representatives statewide. And people with experience in policy writing and also with equity, and also have members from OHA and DHHL. One place to start with equity licensing is really delivery and consumption, but that's more in regulatory. And then really, really important, labeling for Hawaiian grown products. Because as you know, there's a ton of Hawaiʻi products that are available on the mainland that really aren't Hawaii based. So really protecting that is going to be huge. So this is basically the statement from DHHL, Department of Hawaiian Homelands. So following, of course, this goes back to the federal. I feel like we've talked a lot about the federal exemption, and this really goes back to that and why there's still work to be done on that. And then these are some local and national organizations. I think Parabola Center, they just released some really great resources that I think would be really helpful for us. And I wanted to just kind of end with this, in that now is really our time. We are not going to get this time back. I think if anything, even though how rough this last session was, it truly showed how a group of people could come together and really, fight against bad legislation and win. So what if we had good, powerful legislation? I feel like we could also get some really good traction with that. And then these are my resources, and that's it. Thank you.
So thank you. Thank you, everybody. It's 7 o'clock, or
and
we
Maggie.
have 1 minute. And I will let this roll into a open discussion. If everyone wants to unmute and talk at once, everyone's more than welcome to do it. But we're gonna pack up here on our end.
Sorry, I gotta go.
I'd like to thank Hawaii Watch Live for streaming the event. How many people checked out the event on Facebook? Can I see a show of hands? Anyone see it on Facebook? Anyone see it on YouTube? Yeah, right on. So we're improving as much as we can. And if you have any feedback, please let us know. Send us an email, leave it in the chat in the next 30 seconds. Or contact us offline. And if you want to get involved in a panel discussion anytime, we are more than happy to help. And we like to just say mahalo to our sponsors. Without our sponsors, there's no way we could have pulled this off. So thank you to the Cannabis Farms Alliance on Oahu. Thank you, Jason Hanley at Karawaipoa Farms. Thank you again, May.
Jason.
Yeah, you, Jason.
Thank you, Matchmaker Genetics, Andrew. Thank you for
Andrew.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you for everyone that showed up. Thank you for being here. It really means a lot to us, and it means a lot to the folks that can't go to a regular meeting. So we really appreciate you. This is Brent with HawaiiCannabis.org. Thank you, Maggie from HawaiiPatientsUnion.com. We're coming to you live this time from Lo'ihi Studios in downtown Hilo. If you ever want to shoot a music video, this is the place to come.
Where?
We've got all the gear. And thank you,
Oh,
everyone.
I do. I want to write some cannabis inspired music.
Okay, well, come on down.
Yes.
Jonathan will hook you up with some time here. And if you want to shoot a video, we'll help you out too. Okay.
All right. Thanks, Brent.
Thanks, everyone. Hui ho.
Aloha.
So
Aloha.
I'm gonna jump in while everybody's saying aloha because he gave me permission. I just
Go for
really
it.
appreciated everything that was said. And I think we got a lot of really good information from the senator. You know, one of the first things you learn when you go to a courtroom is that emotions don't win the judge or the jury. You have to give the facts. You have to be precise and concise, and you have to be systematic and consistent. And so I think that I've personally gotten a lot of input that tells me from the grassroots level that this matters. You know, it does matter that we're pushing this cart forward from the grass up. But also, you know, I've started my own, my own operation, so to speak. And I feel like it's opened my eyes a lot. You know, I think our Bible is the Ed Rosenthal's Grower's Guide. I just picked that up, and it's like a wealth of information about the plants. At the end of the day, these plants are people too. I think that at the root level of my soul is the love for the plant that I've been, in relationship with since I was 13 years old. But secondly, I see this opportunity and this vision where, there's 50 states. We were the last one, and so far so many other states have tried and failed. And I feel like the platform is there if we can get enough people involved, if we can go about it smartly. And I think these meetings were very inspirational to me. So all of your efforts today were definitely well founded, and I appreciate all of you guys.